A box contains 3 red balls and 3 green balls. 4 balls are drawn from the box at random without replacement. Which of the following sets can be used as a sample space for this experiment? Note that references to the number of balls mean the exact number of that ball drawn from the box. So here in the first one, where we've got a sample point that says 3 red balls, they mean exactly 3 of the 4 balls that are drawn are red. Okay, so we've got to figure this out. S1, S2, S3, these are our proposed sample spaces. It could be all of them, it could be none of them. Okay, we'd have to see how they fit in, how they work. So, we can start with whichever one we want. Let's start with S1. Okay, I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. 3 red, just for 3R, 3 green, no red, no green. I believe that's what we had. Yep, no red balls, no green balls. Alright, so what's this sample space trying to talk about? Well, it's certainly interested in the number of reds and greens, but it doesn't really care when we got the reds, when we got the greens, or anything like that. Okay, so, well, what could we have? What could we have? Well, if we think about the number of red balls we could have, if we're drawing red balls from the box, we could have 1 red ball that we pick, we could have 2 red, or we could have 3 red. You can't have 4, okay, because we only have 3 red balls that are possible. Okay? And if we think about it, could we draw no red balls? If we draw no red balls, then that means we have to have had 4 green balls, but we only have 3. So that can't happen either. Okay. So, what could we have then? We could have, if we've got 1 red, we have to have 3 green. If we have 2 red, we have to have 2 green. Okay. And if we have 3 red balls, we must have 1 green. So these are sort of package deals. These are the possible outcomes. Getting 1 red and 3 green, getting 2 red and 2 green, or getting 3 red and 1 green. Okay. So which sample points represent these outcomes? I see that 3 red, 1 green is represented by the 3 red. 1 red, 3 green is represented by the 3 green. Okay. But nothing represents getting 2 red and 2 green. Okay. Now, over here we've got 0 red, 0 green. Those could, they could be sample points, they just wouldn't represent any outcomes, and so their probabilities would have to be 0. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with having these ones here, but the fact that there is no sample point to represent 2 red and 2 green balls being drawn means that this one is not a sample space. Okay, let's go to the next one. They call it S2. Which was S2? Even number of red balls, more red than green, or an odd number of green balls. So an even number red, more red than green, or an odd number of green balls. Okay. Again, we're interested in the numbers, although we're a little more vague. We don't care about precise numbers like when we get exactly 2 red, okay, but we still might be interested in what possible numbers we can have. And just like before, if we draw 1 red, we get 3 green. If we draw 2 red, we get 2 green, because we have to have drawn 4. Okay. And if 3 of our 4 balls are red, then 1 of them is green. Okay. I'm actually, just so I can do arrows, I'm going to draw these a little lower. And just like before, there's no way to get no reds, because then you'd have to have 4 greens. And once again, we only have 3 green balls to pick, so we have to be aware of that. Alright, let's see what we can match up. So, an even number of reds. That would represent only this sample point. If we did have 4 reds and no greens, then that would also be represented by this sample point, even number of reds, and that's okay. We need every outcome to be represented by a sample point, and you can't have an outcome represented by 2 sample points. Okay? Sample points can represent many outcomes. That's perfectly fine. Okay, nothing else that even number of reds represents. More reds than greens is only going to represent 3 red, 1 green. So that's great. Odd number of greens, well, 3 is an odd number, but so is 1. Okay, and so we've got a problem. The situation where I draw 3 red balls and 1 green is represented by multiple sample points. So, no, this is not a sample space. Okay. So, that's possible. Now, so maybe S3 will do the trick. Or, it's entirely possible that S3 also is not a sample space. We have to be prepared for that. Okay. So, S3 here is 1 red, or 2 reds, or 3 reds. So we're concerned with the number of reds. If you have 1 red and 3 green, we can trot out the same results that we've had for the last few. If we look at that, we get a nice, perfect sort of matchup. Every sample point is, or every outcome is represented by a sample point, and no outcome is represented by multiple different sample points. So yes, this is a sample space. And there we go. Only S3 was a sample space. The other 2 failed, and they failed for different reasons.